She tapped her screen 3 times. First to wake it. Second to swipe the message away. Third too late. I'd already seen it. That name. Not even saved in her contacts. Just a first name, no last initial, no emoji. Nothing. Like she thought keeping it plain would make it invisible. But that's the thing about secrets. They never scream. They whisper. And this one whispered like a dagger against my spine. I didn't say a word. Just handed her the coffee I had made, still warm in my other hand. She smiled. I smiled back. My throat tasted like battery acid. The next 38 minutes felt like performance art. She scrolled through her phone, sipped, laughed once. God, that laugh. I used to love it. I used to believe it meant something. But now it sounded rehearsed, tight, like she was afraid I'd noticed. She had no idea I'd seen everything. The message preview said, "Last night still doesn't feel real. I keep thinking about you in that red dress. I miss it already." That dress wasn't red when she left the house. It was blue, navy. I helped zip it up myself. That meant one of 2 things. Either the dress changed, or she changed into it. I didn't ask. Couldn't. Not yet. Asking means you're ready to hear the answer. And I wasn't. Not even close. Instead, I made a quiet decision. I wouldn't yell. Wouldn't accuse. Wouldn't throw plates or demand names. No. I'd vanish. By the time she left for her yoga class that afternoon, I had packed 2 bags. I turned off my phone, emptied a joint account I had contributed to for 9 years, and left our keys on the table. No note, just silence. And silence is louder than shouting. I drove west until the fuel gauge blinked red. Found a roadside motel run by a couple who didn't ask for IDs, just cash. And for the first time in a decade, I slept under a name that wasn't mine. For months, I didn't speak to anyone who knew me. I learned to live on stale gas station food and the kind of quiet that hums like a refrigerator at night. Constant, low, cold. Then, 1 year later to the exact date, I opened the door to my rented cabin, and there she was, barely standing, eyes hollow, face pale, lips cracked like she'd walked through a desert of regret. And behind her, buckled in the back seat of a taxi, was a baby, with a blue blanket, and my mother's last name printed across it. She didn't ask if she could come in. She didn't even blink. She just stood there, like the rain had soaked through her skin and into her bones. Her hair clung to her face like wet ropes, and her shoes made that awful squishing sound with every shift of her weight. But she didn't care. She just stared at me. Not like someone who missed me, not like someone who came to explain, but like someone who had finally run out of places to hide. And still, she said nothing. I looked past her, toward the cab idling at the edge of the gravel lot. The engine was still running, and through the fogged window I could make out a small figure. A baby, maybe 10 months old, maybe a year, wrapped in a sky-blue blanket with the name Maddox embroidered across the hem. My name, but not her last name. Mine. I took a step back. "Franklin," she said. First word in 12 months, and it felt like a scream inside my ribs. "Please." I didn't answer. I didn't invite her in. I didn't touch her. I just stared at her. Soaking, shaking, exhausted. The woman I once swore I'd grow old with now looked like she had aged without me. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. The worst part? A piece of me believed her, and I hated that. I finally stepped aside, and she entered like a shadow. No luggage, no coat, just a trembling hand gripping the strap of a diaper bag. The baby stayed in the cab, and I watched the driver glance nervously in his mirror. He wasn't expecting this to take long. Once inside, she stood near the table like it might disappear. She looked around at the bare room. No framed pictures, no signs of life. Just wood, dust, and a mattress I bought secondhand from a storage auction. "This is where you've been?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Does it matter?" I replied. She flinched. That was new. Renee never flinched. I sat across from her and waited. No questions. If she wanted to talk, she'd talk. I'd spent a year swallowing words I never got to say. Now I wanted to see if she could do the same. Finally, she pulled out her phone. The same model, the same cracked case I remembered, and slid it toward me. "I didn't delete anything," she said. "I thought you'd want to see. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to." The fact that she offered it meant more than anything inside it. I looked her straight in the eye. "Whose is he?" She hesitated. That was answer enough. My pulse dropped. My chest didn't explode, it collapsed. A silent implosion, like a dying star. She was quiet too long for this to be what I secretly hoped, that the baby was mine, that the message had been misunderstood, that Tyler was some cousin or friend or stupid mistake. But her silence spoke volumes. Then she said it. Not with a confession. Not with tears. But with shame. "I thought he was his," she said. "But I got the test done. He's yours, Franklin. He's yours." I stood up. Not out of anger. Not out of relief. Just instinct. I needed movement because every muscle in my body had gone numb. The idea that he, whoever he was, had a claim on her that close, that deep, that recent, it hollowed me out. "You got pregnant," I said, my voice low, "and you didn't know who the father was." She nodded once. "I didn't even know I was pregnant until after you left. I thought you had abandoned me. I didn't realize you saw the message." A pause. Then the bombshell. "It wasn't Tyler." I froze. "What?" "The name you saw. The message. It wasn't Tyler. It was Theo." I blinked. I didn't know a Theo. I thought I had misremembered. Was I wrong this whole time? Had I disappeared over a different man? She hesitated again. "He was from my office. He was new. It wasn't anything serious. I swear, Franklin, I didn't sleep with him until after you left. The message you saw, he was just flirting." I didn't respond. I finally looked at the phone she had placed between us. Still untouched. Still poisoned. Still a loaded gun lying on the table waiting to be fired. "And the baby?" I asked again. "He's yours. I got the test done 3 weeks ago." I looked her dead in the eye and said something I hadn't planned. "Then why do I still feel like I'm looking at a stranger?" She didn't cry. She didn't argue. But something in her broke then. Something sharp and invisible. And I realized she hadn't come for forgiveness. She'd come because there was nowhere else left to run. And now she was here. With a child I'd never met. With a truth I couldn't fully believe. With a past I tried to bury. And whether I wanted to or not. That past was now breathing in a car seat outside my door. I don't remember walking to the car. 1 minute I was inside watching her shrink into herself across my table, and the next I was standing outside in the cold staring through a foggy window at the child she said was mine. He blinked back at me with eyes too big for his face and hands too small to mean anything yet. His cheeks were pink from the heater running too high, and a string of drool glistened on his chin. I opened the door slowly. The driver looked at me like I was some junkie about to snatch a baby. Can't say I blamed him. I didn't look like a father. I looked like a ghost someone forgot to bury. I didn't speak, just reached in and gently unbuckled the baby. He didn't cry. He didn't laugh either. He just studied me like he was trying to recognize something that wasn't there. Maybe I was too. His name was Elijah, she had said. Not Frank Jr., not a family name. Just Elijah. A name she picked alone. A name she whispered to him in the dark while I was off pretending the world had ended. When I brought him inside, she stood up too fast and stumbled. "Wait, be careful with his neck," she said, and I gave her a look that made her freeze. "I'm not made of glass," I said. "You forget I wanted kids." And I had. I had wanted this. Maybe not this exact version of it, not this chaos or this timing, but the idea of being a father was something I used to cling to when our marriage started showing cracks. I thought a child would heal us. That raising something together would bind us tighter. Instead, he was the thing created in my absence. A mystery built from biology and regret. She sat again, this time on the edge of the bed, hands trembling as she clutched the sides of her knees. I sat across from her with Elijah in my lap. He didn't seem scared. Just curious. And I realized how surreal it all was. This little person didn't know anything about betrayal or silence or lies. He didn't know what I had seen or what she had done. He just stared at me like I was another question waiting to be answered. And that's when she finally broke. "I didn't sleep with him before," she said, her voice cracking like something old and hollow. "I swear on everything, Franklin. I didn't cheat on you. I didn't. I let him get too close. I flirted. I was lonely. I thought you didn't care anymore. And when you left God, when you just vanished, it felt like I had broken something I didn't know how to fix. I didn't speak, because I wanted to believe her. And I also didn't. I went looking for you," she continued. "You deleted everything. You erased yourself from our lives. Do you know what it's like to talk to the police and have them shrug? To tell your husband's job he's missing and have them tell you he resigned the day before he disappeared? I planned it, I said quietly. I needed to be gone. She stared at the baby now, not me. I was angry at first. Furious. I thought you were punishing me for something you misunderstood. And then I found out I was pregnant. And I wasn't sure who the father was. There it was again. The word she kept dancing around. Sure. I got tested, Franklin. Twice. DNA doesn't lie. Neither does timing, I said. You slept with him after I left? She nodded slowly. 3 weeks after. It was the worst mistake I've ever made. I held Elijah closer. He reached for the string of my hoodie and tugged gently, gurgling something unintelligible that somehow sounded wiser than both of us. And then what? I asked. You raised him thinking he might not be mine? No, she said quickly. I convinced myself he was his. It was easier. I didn't want to hope. I didn't want to think I'd pushed away the only real thing I ever had. I shook my head. You could have told me 100 times. You could have emailed, written, contacted my sister. I didn't want to find you until I had an answer. Until I had something to bring you besides more pain. I looked down at Elijah. Then why now? I asked. That's when she dropped the final bombshell. Because he found out, Franklin. Theo. He found out Elijah's not his. And he didn't take it well. I stared at her. What do you mean? Her lip trembled. I mean, he didn't just walk away. He lost it. He followed me. He tried to take Elijah. I had to get a restraining order. I couldn't stay in the city anymore. I was scared. I am scared. I felt something shift in me. Oh wait, maybe? Or a thread pulling taut. And now you're here, I said. Bringing him to me. Asking what? That I play house again? That I forgive everything like none of this happened? No, she whispered. I'm not asking for anything. I didn't believe her. Because no one shows up shattered holding the child of the man they destroyed without asking for something. Even if it's just a place to hide. I didn't sleep that night. She passed out on the couch almost immediately after putting Elijah down in the spare room. He was surprisingly quiet, didn't cry, didn't resist. Maybe that was part of what shook me. He had the calm of someone used to instability. Like chaos was his lullaby. The cabin wasn't made for guests. It had no heat, no real bedding, and the second room had been more of a storage dump than a place for a child. But somehow it didn't matter. He curled up with a stuffed giraffe that looked like it had been through a war zone and fell asleep on a thin mattress I hadn't touched in months. I watched him for a long time, trying to find myself in his features. A nose, a dimple, a rhythm in the way his chest moved. But all I saw was unfamiliarity wrapped in innocence. The harder I tried to see myself in him, the more I felt like an outsider in my own life. I stayed up in the kitchen with the last cup of instant coffee I had, lights off, the kind of silence that starts to hum when it gets deep enough. I used to crave that silence. Now it pressed against my skull like a question I didn't want to answer. Sometime around 3 a.m. she stirred. I heard the couch creak, the shuffle of socks against cold wood, and then her voice, soft, hesitant. He used to come by the daycare. I didn't respond. Just stared out the window into the blackwoods. Her words came slowly, not rehearsed like I expected, but cracked open, raw. After he found out the baby wasn't his, something snapped. I don't know if he believed me, or if he thought I was lying, or if he just couldn't handle being replaced. But he started showing up where he shouldn't. I turned slightly. Police didn't stop him? Oh, they did, she said. But he knew exactly how far he could go before it became illegal. He'd sit in his car outside my apartment. Never said a word. Just watched. Once, I opened the door to leave for work and there was a single baby sock on my welcome mat. I finally turned to look at her. Her eyes weren't teary. They were cold. Like someone who had cried every drop out of her body long before tonight. He never touched Elijah, she said. But I think he wanted to. Not in a violent way. Not exactly. I think he thought the baby was a prize. A symbol of something he lost. Or maybe something he never really had. I didn't know what to say. Because part of me wanted to believe that Theo was the villain in the story, the man who manipulated her, who crossed the line, who scared her into disappearing. But the other part of me, the quiet, ugly part, remembered the message. Last night still doesn't feel real? Was he the only one? I asked suddenly. She blinked. What? Be honest. Was Theo the only one? Or were there others I never saw messages from? Her face twisted like I just slapped her. And for a moment I felt cruel. But cruelty has a way of boiling over when you've been silenced for too long. No, she said finally. There weren't others. I flirted with the idea. I let people get close, just enough to feel wanted. But I never slept with anyone until after you left. I hated how much I wanted to believe that. And I hated that I still didn't. She walked over and leaned against the opposite side of the counter like the distance between us was something we both needed. She didn't ask me what I was thinking. Maybe she already knew. Or maybe she was too exhausted to care. Elijah's not a way to fix anything, she said. I didn't bring him here because I thought it would earn me a second chance. I brought him here because I didn't know where else he'd be safe. And I knew, no matter how much you hate me, you'd never hurt a child. That sentence broke something in me. Because she was right. I wouldn't. Not even close. But I didn't know how to love him either. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Do you want me to leave? She asked after a long silence. I looked up at her. Do you want to? She looked down. I don't know what I want anymore. I stood up and walked past her to the back room where Elijah still slept. I opened the door, stared at the lump beneath the blanket, the tiny fingers curled against his cheek. You want to stay, I said without turning around, then stay. But I'm not the man I used to be. I'm not here to fix anyone. I'm not asking you to, she whispered. I turned and looked her in the eye. But you will, I said. Eventually. You always did. And in that moment I realized something else. This wasn't about forgiveness. This wasn't about parenthood. This was about unfinished business. About loose ends fraying in all directions. And something about Theo's sudden obsession, about the way she'd run in the middle of the night without even trying to contact my family or hers. It didn't feel finished. Not even close. 2 days passed. That's how long it took for the cabin to start feeling like a pressure cooker. Every corner held a memory I didn't want anymore. The drawer where I used to keep my wallet. The chipped mug Renee once gave me with a joke printed on the side. I couldn't even remember what it said, just that it felt like it belonged to someone else. And now everything in that house felt like it belonged to someone else. Elijah adjusted quickly. That's what shocked me. He didn't cry at night. He followed me with his eyes like he was studying me, learning something unspoken. I didn't know how to hold him right, but he didn't seem to care. Renee helped at first, awkward, silent teamwork. We moved around each other like two people playing the same song in different keys. Then, on the third night, something changed. It was close to midnight. I was sitting on the porch again, wrapped in a hoodie, watching the trees sway in the wind. The baby monitor, a cheap thing she brought in her bag, sat beside me on the step, its green light pulsing. I don't know why I had it with me. Habit, maybe? Or guilt? I was thinking about Theo. Not who he was to her, but who he had become since. The sock on her doorstep. The way she said he lingered. A man like that doesn't stop because you move zip codes. And if he thought Elijah was his, or worse, should have been his, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just in the eye of a storm. Then I saw it. At the edge of the tree line, maybe 50 yards out, stood a figure. Not moving. Just standing there. Like he had been watching me for a long time before I ever noticed. I didn't jump. I didn't run. My breath didn't even quicken. I just felt that slow, sinking drop in my gut. You know the one. When your body recognizes danger before your brain catches up. He was wearing something dark. Hoodie or coat, I couldn't tell. No flashlight. No movement. Just a silhouette at the border of the forest like a statue. I didn't have a gun. I didn't even own a bat. Closest thing to a weapon was an old crowbar I'd used when fixing the front step last year. It was leaning against the side of the porch. I didn't go for it. I just stared, locking eyes with a shape I couldn't see clearly. Then finally, the figure moved. Not toward me. Not away. But to the side, behind the trees, gone in 2 steps. I stood up, heart hammering now, and grabbed the crowbar. But I didn't chase him. What would be the point? If it was him, if it was Theo, then he was smart enough to know I'd see him eventually. He wanted to be seen. I went inside, locked every window, every door. Renee was still awake, curled up on the floor beside Elijah's crib like she couldn't bear to be more than a few feet away. I stood there for a while before speaking. We're not alone out here, I said. Her eyes snapped open. What? Someone's in the woods. She stood up so fast she nearly tripped. Did you see his face? No. But I know what I saw. She started to shake again. That same tremble I saw the night she arrived. She pulled her phone from her pocket and showed me the lock screen. A missed call. Unknown number. No voicemail. He's been trying to reach me again, she said. Blocked numbers. No texts. Just calls in the middle of the night. I thought if I ignored them, they'd stop. You should have told me. I didn't want to scare you. I almost laughed. You think I'm not already living in fear, Renee? She looked down. He hasn't touched us. He's just trying to intimidate. That's not comfort. That's a warning with manners. We didn't sleep that night. We took turns watching the front and back. Elijah slept through it all, blissfully unaware that outside the window a man might be circling the perimeter, waiting. At dawn, I checked the woods. Nothing. No tracks. No footprints. But on the porch railing where I usually placed my coffee cup, there was something new. A pacifier. One neither of us had ever seen before. It was red. Elijah's were all blue. Renee stared at it like it was a severed hand. I picked it up slowly, like it might explode. Taped to the underside was a piece of yellowed paper folded twice. And inside, scribbled in ink so faint it looked like it had been wet. You took something that wasn't yours. That's when I realized something else. Something Renee hadn't said. Something that explained everything. Theo didn't think Elijah was his anymore. He still believed he was. The police came, eventually. 2 hours after I made the call, a deputy named Corbin arrived, maybe late 40s, gut over his belt, polite but visibly irritated by the drive. He asked the usual questions in that half-interested way small-town cops do when they assume it's just another domestic squabble that spilled into someone's backyard. No broken locks? No sign of entry? He asked. No, I said. Any footage? Cameras? I shook my head. No internet. No doorbell cam. It's a dead zone out here. He gave a short sigh. All right. Well, unless he threatens someone or physically crosses onto your property again, there's not much we can. He left something behind, I interrupted, holding up the pacifier in a sealed Ziploc bag. It didn't belong to my son. Corbin glanced at it, then back at me. That's not illegal. He also left a note, I added. Implied threat. I showed him the paper. He read it. No reaction. This isn't really actionable, he said with a shrug. It's creepy, I'll give you that. But if I made arrests every time some jilted guy left weird notes for an ex, I'd have a jail full of poets. That was it. That was the extent of what the law could do. Not surprising, but still disappointing. After he left, Renee sat in the corner of the room, knees hugged to her chest, completely silent. She hadn't said a word since I showed her the note. And honestly, I didn't press her. Something had shifted. Something I didn't understand yet. It wasn't until the baby napped that she finally stood and crossed the room to me, barefoot, pale as the clouds outside. I lied, she said. I didn't react. I just waited. She reached into the bottom of her bag and pulled out a phone, not the one she used for calls. It was older. Scratched. Looked like it hadn't been touched in months. This was my second phone, she said. I kept it secret. I stared at her. What's on it? She didn't answer. Just unlocked it and handed it to me. The screen lit up. Messages. Photos. Voicemails. All from one contact. Theo. At first it was innocent enough. Flirty texts. Bad jokes. A few late-night voice notes. I kept scrolling. Pictures of food. Compliments on her outfits. Then the tone changed. Somewhere around the 3rd month after I had left, it got darker. You don't have to raise him alone. If he ever comes back, I'll handle it. You already know who he belongs to. Then the voicemails. I played one. His voice was calm, unnervingly calm. I've seen him. In your arms. He looks like me. You're just afraid to admit it. You're protecting a fantasy, Renee. But biology doesn't lie. One day you'll wake up and he'll call me Dad without you ever telling him to. That's how nature works. I locked the phone and sat back, pulse pounding. He was obsessed, I said. She nodded. I told him it was over. I told him I had the test. But he didn't believe me. He said I faked it. Did you? She looked offended. No. I wouldn't lie about that. You lied about everything else. That stopped her cold. But she didn't argue. Because we both knew it was true. I wanted to handle it myself, she said. I thought he'd eventually move on. I never expected him to escalate. I leaned forward. You don't get it, Renee. He's not trying to win you back. He's trying to rewrite the story. You left the city thinking you were running from him. But now I think you brought him with you. She looked at me, confused. He followed you. Not to punish you, to reclaim what he thinks is his. And I think he's just getting started. She sank to the floor, visibly shaking now. What do we do? I stood and walked to the window. The woods outside didn't look peaceful anymore. They looked like they were hiding something. I don't know, I said honestly. But if he's willing to stalk you across state lines, leave objects for the baby, and watch us from the trees, then he's not going to stop. She stood, slowly. Maybe we should just give him what he wants. I turned to her, stunned. What are you talking about? Let him see Elijah. Just once. Let him hold him. Maybe that's what he needs to let go. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I snapped. You think that'll satisfy him? It'll feed him. It'll give him permission. I don't know what else to do, she shouted. I'm scared, Franklin. I can't sleep. I'm terrified every time I hear a branch break outside. I just want him gone. You want him gone? I said, my voice low. Then stop giving him pieces of yourself. Stop treating him like he owns a chapter in our lives. He's not Elijah's father. He's not your partner. He's a man who crossed the line. I paused, then added, and I think we need to find out how far he's willing to cross. That night I made a plan. Not to fight him, not to run, but to bait him. Because if he wanted to believe Elijah was his, then I'd let him follow that belief. I'd let him think he was close. And when he finally stepped forward, I'd be waiting. The plan was simple. I would sit on the porch every evening at the same time holding Elijah. No phone, no weapon, no company. Just the illusion of vulnerability. Renee would remain inside, lights dimmed, blinds half closed. We wouldn't talk. We wouldn't make calls. We'd just wait. Because I knew Theo was watching. And men like him, they don't know how to let go of delusions. They build entire lives on them. They script imaginary families, rewrite memories, force reality to match their fantasies. The second he believed we had let our guard down, he'd come closer. That's when I'd catch him. It started the second night. A rustle in the trees. No animal. Too steady. Measured. I didn't look. I just rocked Elijah back and forth, humming tunelessly. The monitor inside lit up. Renee watched from the hallway, holding her breath. Then came the whistle. 2 notes. Low. Familiar. It was the same melody from a voicemail Theo left on her phone weeks ago. The one where he whispered, "He has my eyes." It wasn't a song, just a signal. Elijah stirred in my arms but didn't cry. He reached for the air like he could feel something was different. I held him tighter. He never showed himself. Not fully. Just the shadow between trunks. The flicker of movement. The presence. He wanted us to know he was there. Not to scare us this time, but to plant the idea. He was close enough to take him. After a few minutes, I stood and calmly walked back inside. Renee was shaking, hands white-knuckled on the kitchen table. "Did he come out?" she whispered. "No, but he's there." She sat down hard. "Franklin, maybe we should just go." "And then what? Live in fear wherever we end up? You think crossing another state line will change him? You can't outrun obsession." She looked down at Elijah, who was now wide awake in my arms, eyes flicking between the two of us like he understood every word. "What are we going to do?" she asked, for the 10th time that week. I looked at her, really looked. This was the same woman who once insisted on spending a whole day repainting the kitchen because the light didn't feel right. The woman who used to collect antique spoons from yard sales and pretend each one had its own personality. Now she sat wrapped in her own skin like a prisoner. I didn't recognize her anymore, but maybe I never really did. "We end it," I said. "Clean. Quick. No more hiding." She flinched. "You mean call the police again?" "No," I said. "We give him what he wants. Just not the way he expects." The next day, I drove into the nearest town, 40 miles out, and paid cash for a burner phone. No names. No trail. I sent one message from it, just one. "You were right. He looks just like you. Come see for yourself." No name. No address. But Theo wasn't dumb. I knew he'd find us. And this time I'd be ready. That night we made everything look unguarded. No locks, window cracked open just an inch. Lights off, except for the hallway lamp near Elijah's room. Like we were too tired to keep trying. I stayed up. Renee pretended to sleep on the couch. And at exactly 3:22 a.m., I heard it. The screen door creaked. Soft, careful, like a breath held too long. I didn't move. I sat by the bedroom door, behind a sliver of shadow, holding the crowbar. My palms were wet. My heartbeat was so loud it felt like it echoed in the walls. Then a footstep. One. Then another. Creak. Pause. Creak. He was inside. I held my breath. I had set the baby monitor to echo outside, low static to mask sound. He wouldn't hear me. Wouldn't expect me. I prayed he'd go straight to Elijah's room. He always said that's what he wanted. But then silence. Too long. I peeked through the crack of the door. I couldn't see him. I couldn't hear him. Until suddenly. A click. Then a flash. He was taking photos. I stood too fast, the floorboard betrayed me, and he spun toward the sound. For a second, just one single, suspended heartbeat, I saw his face. He wasn't how I imagined. Not tall, not strong, not charming. Just average. Unremarkable. Except for his eyes. They were blank. Like a man who didn't care if he was caught as long as he could prove he was right. I raised the crowbar. Put it down. He didn't flinch. "You're not his father," I said, voice low. "You were never anything but a mistake." He finally spoke. Calm. Cold. "That's not what the baby said." I lost it. I don't remember leaping forward. I don't remember swinging. But suddenly the phone was on the floor, shattered, and Theo was gone, out the door like smoke. Vanished into the trees before I could follow. I didn't sleep. Neither did Renee. When the sun rose, I found muddy footprints by the back door. And a baby bottle. Not ours. On it, a note scrawled in tiny, trembling ink. "Try again. I'll be back when he's ready to choose." I didn't open the bottle. I didn't touch the note. I just stared at it, sitting there on the porch in the exact same place I used to drink my morning coffee. Like he knew. Like he had memorized this house the way I had memorized his name. That simple act, leaving it there, it said more than any message could have. He was done playing. This was his last move before he crossed the line completely. Renee wanted to run again. That morning she was already packing bags, whispering plans about cabins farther north, rental cars, changing names. I let her talk for a while. I let her spiral. And then, when she stopped to breathe, I finally said the one thing I hadn't said since she arrived. "No." She looked up at me, confused. "No more running," I said. "We're not ghosts. We're not going to live like prey just because he refuses to accept the truth." She stood frozen, waiting for me to say something else. When I didn't, she asked the question we had both been avoiding. "What if he comes back?" I nodded. "He will." She took a shaky breath. "Then what?" I looked toward the woods where the trees stood tall and quiet again. "Then I'll tell him the truth. One more time. And if he still doesn't listen, then the law will. But this time we won't run. We fight with the truth." Later that day, I went back to town. I returned with something different, a lawyer. Not a fancy one. Just a man who knew how to write words that carried weight. We filed for an emergency restraining order. We documented everything. The bottle. The photos. The texts. The voicemail recordings from the old phone. The pacifier. Even the footprints. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. But it was real. The judge believed us. Maybe it was the baby. Maybe it was Renee's face. Or maybe it was the story that sounded too unsettling not to be true. An order was issued. Filed. Approved. Theo was served 2 weeks later. I wasn't there. I didn't want to be. The deputy who delivered the papers said he didn't argue. Didn't speak. Just stared for a long time and nodded. Then closed the door. We never saw him again. Weeks passed. Then months. The woods stopped whispering. The nights became silent again, but not heavy like before. Peaceful. Elijah started saying real words. Dada was first. I cried harder than I thought I would. Renee didn't move out. Not at first. She stayed. Helped. Earned her place back slowly. She didn't push me to forgive. She just showed up. Day after day. Changing diapers. Making meals. Painting the nursery in a new soft green the first didn't realize I liked. One day, while watching Elijah sleep, she whispered, "I don't deserve this." And for the first time, I disagreed with her. Maybe we both did. Time passed. I won't say everything healed. That's a lie people tell to sell happy endings. But something better happened. We rebuilt. From the truth. From pain. From quiet honesty. Not for the past. But for him. Elijah. The boy who taught me how to breathe again, even when I thought I'd forgotten how. And one morning, as the sun rose through the trees and spilled onto the floor of our tiny living room, he looked up at me, blinked those big eyes, and said, "Home." And for the first time in a long, long time, it finally felt true.